Fear is torment. But God gave us a solution to fear. God's not giving us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of love, power, and a sound mind. The question is, where does fear come from? It doesn't come from source. It doesn't come from God. Well, the quality of your thoughts determine the quality of your life. What's going on, my people? This is your boy, that's Will Rogers, a.k.a. Master Teacher 33. Breaking down fear is torment. Breaking down or introducing all disease is dis-ease or uneasiness. And then it happens in the physical, starts in the spiritual. Lastly, God's solution, the universe solution, source solution, the Paloma solution, the Peru solution. So it's extremely important that we over and understand the importance, my brothers, the importance, my sisters, of revealing, explaining, illuminating, and simplifying God's medicine. Everybody, not everybody, but most people don't have the ability to control their thoughts. Meaning, things happen and it pulls us out of our comfort zone. It pulls us out of our reservoir. We put the keys to our happiness in someone else's pocket. Surely, it could be a legitimate reason for the feeling. But your job is to over and understand that the feeling that you establish controls the life that you live, even though those feelings are justified. Something bad happens to you, you're justified in having that feeling that responds to that event. Unfortunately, as you have that feeling that responds to that event, you continue to prolong the event. And one of the most important ways of prolonging bad events in people's lives in the areas of wealth, health, wisdom, and great relationships is this thing that we call fear. And so when we look at fear, fear is torment. And it's very interesting because as we talk about this today, this is just an introduction. I have both books, including this one, again, is included inside of the 1000 for 1000. And it's very important that we over and understand that when we talk about the 1000 for 1000, these are actually ecosystems. These are ways by which you are able to establish a mental disposition so that way you can be resilient in the face of adversity. The Bible talks about the solution. The solution is a merry heart. A merry heart does good like medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. Proverbs 17:22. Then we look at Proverbs 15:13, where it says, a merry heart makes for a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. And most people allow events to break their spirit. You have an expectation. The expectation is not met. Therefore, the spirit is broken. That causes a litany of disease, especially high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney failure, glaucoma. A lot of these diseases have to do with blood pressure. They have to do with understanding what I'll be breaking down today. Now remember, these books purchased separately are $49. They are only $1 when you pick up the 1000 for 1000, which is the entire ecosystem, my entire ecosystem. Now let's get into the neuroscience. Again, this is just the introduction. You want to pick up the entire books, all 3 books, or all 1000 books to assist you with over and understanding the neuroscience. This is what we're breaking down today. The neuroscience behind this thing that we call fear, which is why even if fear does exist, I don't promote it, because fear is the body's alarm system. It's telling you something. But fear is also the gateway to introducing how you walk through. So the neuroscience behind what is called the parasympathetic, again, vagal crown, regulating the amygdala that allows you to walk through. Your job is to understanding the power of how that works. It's very, very, very important. Now, each and every one of us, as from a neuroscience perspective, when we talk about the cognitive reappraisal, that's your job, is to understand the cognitive reappraisal. When we talk about the cognitive reappraisal, what we're talking about is how the amygdala, how the hypothalamus operates when it comes to reframing fear using a higher perspective, because that helps to adjust the prefrontal cortex that is activated when you don't feel safe, when you don't feel secure, or you don't feel like something is going to work or working out. This allows you to regulate what is called the vagal nerve, which also allows you to help get past or transmute fear by getting past the amygdala and the hypothalamus. Now, from a neurological perspective, again, the book goes into more detail. Today, all we're just breaking down is that the fear has a biological circuit. That's why your feelings manifest inside of your body. So the feelings manifest inside of the body. The amygdala is the guardian of the gate, so to speak. The hippocampus, again, is the scribe. It writes down what the guardian lets in through the gate. And then the prefrontal cortex is the king or queen of the garden of the gate. It carries out what the amygdala lets in. So that's why the reticular activating system, that's why the amygdala, that's why the hypothalamus, all of these creates the fear circuit. So your job and my job is to understand that as we go through this, we're talking about what is called, one of the things that is called the HPA. So the HPA is just another term or another way of explaining how chronic fear. And so what we're talking about is understanding that, man, sure, things happen. How do you process the things that happen? How do you feel? How does it affect your blood pressure? Do you get angry? Do your hands get sweaty? Do you want to, lay hands on somebody? So the way that we process information, the way that you process information when things happen to you, that determines whether or not you are able to over and understand how fear affects the human body. Because when fear affects the human body, what happens? Hey, what's up, Sister Cheryl of the West? God, man, I'm so glad you tuned in, Sister Cheryl. So Sister Cheryl is one of my clients, ex-clients, and when me and Sister Cheryl was in, along with a lot of other people that was inside of the group, and we was part of this rotating thing. One of the things that Sister Cheryl invested in was money, and so Sister Cheryl, along with quite a few people in the group, right after COVID, and something happened with what I call and what I teach inside of my credit is power system. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, how to process. Because what we're talking about is the game of life. So when you have a feeling like you've been, let's say, done wrong, and it's legitimate. It's like when my daughter died. When my daughter transitioned, I had a feeling. And that feeling, if I didn't know how to process that feeling, it would affect my body. And so when Sister Cheryl, along with a lot of other people in my rotating system, I use PayPal. PayPal will give me anywhere from $20,000 to $70,000. PayPal, just out of nowhere, stopped that program. Now, I had already taken money from Sister Cheryl West, taken money from a couple other people that I won't mention, unless they want me to mention it. And Sister Cheryl gave me the money, and then the program stopped. So the $70,000 that I was expecting to get, I didn't receive. So I wasn't able to return Sister Cheryl's money back. So now Sister Cheryl is in a state where she wants to know, Doc, where's my money? And so even though I've been paying her a small bit of the $20,000. So the Cheryl wants the $20,000 in cash. And so if I don't give Sister Cheryl the $20,000 in cash, Sister Cheryl makes these threats. Like, I don't know why, Sister Cheryl. Well, I don't know why you would do that when, I have no problem. I've been airing my dirty laundry on Facebook for social media since it came out. So I don't do fear, because that's the point of this class, all classes, all books. How do you process fear? Well, you process fear because you understand the biological significance. Dis-ease is uneasy. So if someone makes you uneasy, that's stored inside of your body. Your job is to process their uneasiness, however you choose to process the uneasiness. Now, there's different ways to process the uneasiness. Like with me and Sister Cheryl's case, all I do is just the money that I owe her, I just pay it back. Now, she may want it paid back at them, like I tell her all the time, and all the members, this is the same thing goes not just with money, it also goes this way with knowledge. It goes this way with relationships. In a relationship, your wife may have an expectation. As a man, you may have an expectation in the area of, let's say, cooking or cleaning or sex. What happens when those expectations are not met? How do you process it? That's the whole point in life. Life is all about how do you process disappointment? Because everything in life is the result of two things: unrealistic expectations, misplaced dependencies. All problems, all feelings, the enemy's job is to get you in a state where Sister Cheryl is at, where you have a feeling that something cruel, something harsh, and something unjust has happened to you. Notice it's true. It is never false. The enemy, if you want to use that term, is way more cunning. That's the word that the Bible uses. And so what we're talking about is all of understanding the etymology of fear. Fear is an old English word that means calamity. It means sudden danger. It means peril. It means a terrible plight. I like to use the word cruel, harsh, unjust, because the first key, oppression. Everything, in order for you to get disease in your body, you have to be oppressed. Oppression, that leads to depression. That leads to recession. That leads to possession. In order for possession to take place, so that way you feel like you got to take action, you got to respond, you got to attack, you got to make threats, you got to do all this stuff, and none of that works, because if a person is in a position to do, they would do. Most people, anybody like me, anybody that knows me, know that, hey, I've been helping people my entire life. People have been helping me also. So remember, give and it shall be given. Everything is temporary. Life is about a journey. It's about understanding that you can be on top, you ain't gonna be up there forever. You may be at the bottom, you ain't gonna be there forever. We go through life, events happen. You're never at the top all the time, and you're never at the bottom all the time. It's all about how you process. You're supposed to be happy at the top, and you're supposed to be happy at the bottom. Your happiness doesn't come from external events. It shouldn't, but it does. Everybody's happiness, 99.99% of the people, are way more happy when things are going good than they are when things are going bad. That's just human nature. It is human nature, brothers and sisters, to be angry or be upset when things are not going good. Your job is, how do you feel? Because disease is going to show up in your body. If you hold that anger inside of your body, you're supposed to process that anger. And there's a plethora of different ways to process anger. Your job is to over and understand that when we're talking about this from a biblical, from a spiritual perspective, that word means ambush. It means danger. It means it's a feeling, though. It invokes a feeling like something was lying in wait and it just startled you. It jumped. So fear means ambush. Fear means, again, I'm reading this from, again, the Proto German as well as the Old English. You can go into the Greek and Aramaic, no matter what language you use, when you break down these terms, just like it says in the Bible, Perfect love casts out fear. And notice, as I talk about inside of the 3 books that I'm talking about today, as well as the 1,000 for 1,000, when you go into John chapter 1, 1 John chapter 4 verse 18 reads, 1 John 4:18, there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear, because fear hath torment. Fear hath torment. Now that's a powerful word. Now when we look up this word torment, that's what happens when you don't process fear. That's why disease shows up in your body. So disease shows up in the body whenever you don't process fear. Now, again, before we get into the biology of it, we got to realize that perfect love is the only way to get rid of it. You got to operate from a place of high vibration. That's what we're breaking down today. So when we look at this, let's break this down real quick. When we look at this word, again, we're delving into this word torment in English. I always like to use blueletterbible.org. You can use any resource you want, but we see this word right here. Now, I like the way it's pronounced, because what it does is it gives you a basic understanding. Let me go back over here, of understanding how this word affects us. So this is the correct pronunciation of this word.
2851, colossus.
Colossus. So that word torment means colossus. Colossus is very interesting because it's similar to the word calluses. So that gets into your nervous system. So what happens? Now remember, somebody owes you money. They don't pay you your money. And so what you have now is feelings. And that creates calluses or colossus. So colossus is torment. Cruel, harsh, and unjust. But it's correction. It's punishment. It's a penalty. Why would you be having it if somebody owed you money? But this is how you see, this is the trick of how it gets into your nervous system. It has to do with what they call a penal inflection, punishment. So the person, going back to my example with Sister Cheryl, so if I owe Sister Cheryl money, but Sister Cheryl is the one that feels the punishment. Why? Because it's cruel, it's harsh, it's unjust, oppression, depression, possession. That's the process. And last, recession, because it is real. It's not fake. And then underneath this word colossus or calluses, we have another Greek word, because we break it down. What happens when somebody owes you money and they don't pay you?
2849, kaladzo.
Notice it happens to the other person though. Kaladzo. So kaladzo, when we look at this from a spiritual and a biological perspective, it puts you into a loop. It means to loop, to prune as trees or wings, to curb, to check, to restrain, to chasten, to correct, punishment, to cause to be punished. So whenever, according to the Bible, again, we're just going through the Bible, just break it down to biblical terms. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, nobody really cares. At least I don't. I do believe in how does words affect my body, because I live in the body. I have a spirit. It possesses the soul and it hangs out inside of my body. And so my job is to make sure that my body functions. So how can I help my body function according to its God-given purpose? That's the whole point of the class. That's the whole point of the books. That's the whole point of everything that I've been doing since day one. So since day one, I don't wake up in the morning trying to hurt, trying to harm, or trying to defraud someone. But nobody knows my intent because they mine. So somebody could perceive. Remember, it's all about perception. How do you perceive the events that's happening to you? If you perceive the events that's happening to you as being hurtful, as being harmful, it's extremely, extremely important that you understand how do you process it. Otherwise, it's going to affect you on what is called an allostatic level. So let's wrap this up by understanding what disease is. Fear is sudden. Fear is when an expectation is not met. Fear is when a realistic expectation, A contract, going back to my example with Sister Cheryl again, a contract is whether it's verbal or written, and you have every intent, the other person have every intent. Nobody goes into it with an evil intent. Man looks on the outward appearance, God looks on the heart. So because you have a good heart and you set up something, there is this calamity, there is this sudden danger, there is this peril, there is this sudden attack, there is this terrible slight or sight. All of that is avoided because of you set your mindset. There are people who don't have a positive mindset for whatever reasons. There are people who do not have thankfully, I'm not one of those people. There are people who don't have a positive mindset. They enter into it with the intent. So your job is to understand your intent. So you cannot allow someone to project. That's witchcraft. You cannot allow somebody to put something on you. So we can get into the scriptures as well. Your job is to understand your intent, your heart. So that way you don't hold that in your body. Now, you can help other people, but at the end of the day, it's the other person's responsibility. And it's the other person's accountability. Responsibility and accountability, bam, that's yours. Now, how do you process it? Well, we got to understand that fear affects the human body because fear is what is called a whole body state. It affects your nervous system. It gets into your nervous system. And once it gets into your nervous system, that's where it starts to wreak havoc. And when it wreaks havoc, it's extremely important that you understand that. So it's very, 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 very important that fear, the way that you process it, because the amygdala is what they call the threat detector. It's the threat detector in the limbic system. It is the way by which the hypothalamus and the brainstem, it's the way by which the automatic or the autonomic nervous system works. It's also what is called the HPA, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal glands, HPA. That is how it affects the human body. And so when we look at the human body from that perspective, we talk about how blood flows. So it decreases the blood flow into the frontal lobe. That creates tunnel vision. And so that's why it's so important when we understand how blood flow decreases. So that means your capillaries, your eyes, your kidneys, spleen, it starts to affect the body because fear, it restricts and it limits the blood flow throughout the body. So your job is to understand how this affects the human body. So fear or chronic fear is this ability for you to understand how the HPA axis, what they call it from a medical perspective, creates and has this effect on a biological level. It starts again in the spirit, but it manifests in the body. So to affect what's going on in the body, you have to go into the spirit. So when you go into the spirit realm and you address it from a neuroscience perspective, bam, that's when everything changes. Because at the base core, we have to understand that fear is a circuit. It activates the reticular activating system or the animal brain, the reptile. Your job is to activate the higher self. You don't want to stay in a lower vibrational state. You want to operate the higher self. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's easy, but it can be done. I've been doing it for a long time. Bad things happen. Your job is to get out of survival, get into thrival. Your job is to connect to source. Your job is to connect to the higher realms, to the higher levels. That is your job. Your job is to make sure that you are vibrating in all and operating at the highest level of the game. And the way by which you do that is to understand how it affects the biology. Because the main reason why things happen is because, again, we really don't really have a true, clear understanding. My people perish for lack of knowledge. So when you get more knowledge, it leads to less peril. When you get more knowledge, it leads to less peril. When you get more knowledge, it leads to less peril. My people perish for lack of knowledge. We live in a world of unlimited opportunities. Your job is to over, and understand that people perish for lack of knowledge. So to avoid perish, get knowledge, whether we're talking about cosmology, theology, or biology. And so you expand your consciousness. I've been very, very high. I've been very, very low. This ain't my first rodeo. It's extremely important that you over, and understand that there's no losses. There's just lessons. These lessons happen to teach you how to expand your consciousness. That's what the game is about. Life is about understanding, how do I understand the underworld, the dorsal vagal nerve? How do I understand the battlefield, which is the sympathetic nerves? And how do I understand the sanctuary, which is what they call the vagus or the vagal system? That's your job. Because spiritual neuroscience is the ability to understand that the presence of God is not just a belief. It's extremely important to understand that. The presence of God is not just a belief. The presence of God is this ability for you to oscillate and to vibrate at the highest level of the game. That's the presence of God. The presence of God is the ability for you to operate and vibrate at the highest level of the game, to regulate the body first, because you're a spirit. You have possession of soul and you manifest through body. So your job is to make sure that you are operating and vibrating in the best possible manner. And the way by which you do that is you make sure that you are operating in the spirit, that you walk in the spirit. And the way by which you do that is to maintain your intent. So things happen, brothers and sisters, in your life. You do the best you can with where you are at. You bloom where you're planted. You always make sure that you treat people the way that you want to be treated. That simply means that you're operating in a place where you refrain from fear, but you're operating in a place of faith. So all things work together for the good. It's not saying that you're not going to have bad experiences. The Bible says, count it all joy when. It doesn't say if. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials and temptations, knowing that the testing of your faith worketh patience. So like everything in life, this is a test. It's a lesson. What's the lesson? The lesson is you got to go higher. The lesson is that you got to operate in love, because perfect love casts out fear. It's easy to say it, but the whole point is to get to the point where you're actually able to do it, where you are literally able to have a relationship that's personal and that's private. It's not affected by things outside of you. Do things outside of you happen? Absolutely. Your job is to walk in the spirit. Last but not least, again, the books we talk about today, FEARETH, TORMENT. Again, all these books are $1 inside of the 1,000 for 1,000, or you just pick up at the regular price. Next is all dis-ease is dis-ease. It's uneasiness. Sure, there's different causes that makes the body uneasy. Your job is to understand that God has given you medicine. What is God's medicine? He tells us right here in Proverbs 17:22 and Proverbs 15:13, as we just discussed. So you want to pick up, again, both books today, only $49.95 for both books, again, or get everything that I've done as part of the 1,000 for 1,000. Man, this is your boy, Dr. Will Rogers, a.k.a. Master Teacher 33. Make sure, brothers and sisters, that you operate in faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these three is love. I'm going to see y'all at the top. Let's go.